we will address both the mayor's proposed budget and the Milford Board of Education proposed budget. Since as noted, there are members of the Board of Education here, along with members of the administration. We will start discussion with the Board of Education proposed budget. And I would open the floor to any members of the Board of Finance who would like to discuss the Board of Education budget. If they have any comments, discussion, welcome to do so at this time now. And I should note again that Board of Finance member Moulton is out of town for tonight's meeting.
I'll just comment and say I think it's again a thoughtful budget. I heard the words recovery, hopes and dreams for our youth. And when I think about the kids in Milford, I think they deserve the best of everything. And the 2.28% increase. I think it was what was the increase of teacher salaries? Do you know the percentage? Is it
Of just the salaries or the additional?
salaries?
The percentage of the teacher's contract was on average 2.95%.
Okay, so I mean, once again, thoughtful, those are contracted positions, and we need to fulfill those amounts, and the total increase is 2.28. I'll be in support of the budget this year once again. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for your comments.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Yes,
Comment.
Mr.
Overall, I was very impressed with the presentation that you made. And it was really good to see that some ideas that were initiated a couple of years ago, like the language program, rolling it back to younger students, which is very effective. And also, having seen the genesis of the whole idea of play in early education, again, it's very good to see it coming to fruition. And I got to commend Board Member Adam DeYoung for kind of initiating that, and he should be very proud that it has come to pass. The other thing is overall, the school board, Mr. Riccitelli, Dr. Catania, and all your staff have done a really good job to make the school system very attractive. And a special kudos to Chris Brown, because it seems like he has brought special ed, which was kind of could explode in terms of cost. He got it under control. And I believe the quality is still there. So that is actually an amazing accomplishment. The only real concern, I have two concerns. The ongoing enrollment plateau, because I don't think we should be as draconian as shutting down a school. Identifying what is related to actual enrollment and getting a handle. I don't believe it's going to go away. And maybe with the development that's going on in town, enrollment will spike, and it will be good that all the facilities are there. But I think I've sensed a reluctance to actually deal with cutting back based upon enrollment. And I would challenge you, not necessarily for this year, but for next year, it would be helpful to identify what's related to enrollment. And that would be a target. And there's some fixed costs, they ain't going away, but it's the ones tied to enrollment. The other concern that I have, and maybe we'll go back and forth, is the expansion of counselors. And I wonder, is there the rigor for the requirements for counselors that there is in a lot of the other aspects, teaching, and because overall counselors don't always have the best reputation as being effective. And that would be my concern, is that you're adding counselors, and I'm not quite sure I see the benefit. And those are my big things. But overall, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a reminder that we're not actually voting this evening, it's a discussion, just trying to get a sense of the board. We will actually have our vote a week from yesterday, on March 16th. But it's helpful for everyone to express their concerns or comments at this time so that we can take the appropriate steps at our next meeting.
Well, I also, I do have a question.
Yeah.
With the volatility of the world and how big are the contingency funds in case fuel doubles or triples? Those are, you know, we're in abnormal times. Are the contingencies sufficient that you could handle some catastrophic changes?
So, from the city side, we do have a fund balance that's relatively substantial. Obviously, it could cover any type of increased fuel costs. But then, above and beyond that, it's approximately 15% of our overall budget, Peter. So approximately 15% of our overall budget is what the fund balance is at right now.
Okay.
And that's on the city side. That's 15% of the approximate $240 million.
Okay.
On the Board of Education side, there is one lump sum for the operating costs. Some of the variables on the Board of Education side that are in flux this year, like healthcare costs and insurance costs, are actually on the city side, so there's the argument that those could get assumed by the city through the fund balance or other funding mechanisms. But on the Board of Education side, they get one lump sum. There is some contingency or reserve accounts that the Board of Education has, but it's less. They don't have a $30 million fund balance that the city has, but you know, if there was something catastrophic, we would initiate some type of emergency protocols to move forward.
And you can do that?
The case may be.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully we won't get to that point. Okay, further?
That's actually my only thing to add too, is about the gas prices. Partially about the electives as well that we went over in the last meeting, because if the electives are being offered 5 days a week, I thought that was possibly if we could cut down and utilize more of our contract workers to move them across specific electives, but I don't know if that can be resolved right away, so that was just something I noted. And gas prices were my other concern, but there's nothing we can do about that, so.
Thank you. Well, I would just like to know, I think Ray raised some excellent points, and that's really my primary concern with the Board of Ed budget. I'm not one to sort of nickel and dime and try to pick a few things here or there. I don't really think that's effective, but I do have concerns, and I've expressed them now for a few years. I think that given the situation with declining enrollment, that there is going to be at some point in time where hard decisions are going to have to be made. Hopefully, enrollment will level or pick up. I don't think those decisions regarding structural changes for the school system are really the decisions for this board to make. We're not elected officials, we're appointed. But at some point, the hard decisions are going to need to be made by the Board of Ed, by the Board of Aldermen, et cetera, about, you know, where does Milford need to be 10 years from now as far as our structure? Do we need the facilities? Hopefully we do. Hopefully our community is strong, it's growing in the sense that with our households, we have a lot of people moving to town, it's a great place to live. So we're lucky in that sense, we're a strong, vibrant community, so hopefully our enrollment will continue to be steady or increase. But at some point, again, I think if it doesn't, we're gonna have to reevaluate, the professionals reevaluate what needs to be done with the system, if anything. That would be my concern. Again, I do reiterate that the Board of Ed and the administration does a wonderful job with our school system. Again, it's high quality and is an asset for the community. So I'm in support of the request, but I would request that administration of both the Board of Ed and, I think there was a long-term plan looked at a few years ago, long-term planning, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it could be longer now. All I would ask is that, again, that perhaps it's time to revisit that, if the trends continue where they've been going for the last several years, so that's all I would have at this point. I don't know if anybody else has any further comments. If not, I think you have a sense of where the board is. I know I had spoken to Mr. Scott, Mr. Walton, and I know he had some similar concerns as to what was expressed tonight. I'm not sure he can raise them himself when he's back for next week, but I think he was concerned about some of the staffing. That they are adding some positions this year that are coming off the grant and going on to the budget side this year. And I think there was some concern about that shift from the grant and increasing it there, which I think is a fair point. And the staffing really has been leveled over the last several years, even though it does increase or decrease by a few people every year. If you look back at the long-term trends, I think it's been pretty stable over the last 10 years or so. So thank you for your presentation last week, and appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll see you next week.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
And if you have any questions in between, please let us know.
Yeah, be well. Thank you for coming out tonight. Okay.
So on to the city side of the budget, just as a reminder, this year was a revaluation year, so that July 1st, 2022 is the first time that taxpayers will realize the impact of the shift of tax burden because of the revaluation. Just about anything that this board does is going to mean that some taxpayers are going to pay more, some taxpayers are going to pay less, maybe some taxpayers are going to pay the same amount, but there is a significant increase in the grand list. I think since we first started, the city assessor actually signed the grand list. He signed it at the end of last month, so the last day of February 28th. And it was about a $1.2 billion increase from the previous grand list. State statute requires that every 5 years we reassess all of the properties in Milford. And there was a big increase. Most of that increase was because of the reassessment. Some of that increase was attributable to new construction over the course of the last year, new buildings, things of that nature. But the lion's share was because of the reval. And we have some challenges this year, which I've already mentioned. The biggest challenge, far and away, is the increase in our healthcare costs, approximately $11 million. Never have we had that big of an uptick. Milford has about 5,000 people on our health insurance, even though we have around 2,000 employees, both full-time and part-time. We have the employees and their dependents on our health insurance plan, so we have a significant liability there, over $40 million, and climbing. It's about 20 to 25, about 20% of our overall budget is our healthcare costs, which is a lot. And that's inclusive of both the Board of Education side and the city side. The budget process is a long process. It usually starts in October when Peter's office gives everybody, all their departments, all of our agencies, a budget packet. Those agencies and departments then go and structure their individual budgets. Then Peter and I meet with each of the department heads in December. Peter and I finalize the initial budget by the end of January, and you're presented with it in February, and by next week, mid-March, you will have presented your recommendations to the Board of Aldermen, who will then take it up early April and finish their deliberations by early to mid-May. It's a long process on purpose, because a lot of the information that Peter and I have back in October changes significantly by May. And so some of the information that we're still trying to get, we will likely not have it before your budget vote on Wednesday of next week. So we just have to do our best up until that date, and the Board of Aldermen will then be given the most current information that we have at the time prior to their vote. So some of the things that we're still waiting for, one of the things is the stopgap coverage, or the for our health insurance. We're seeing a large increase in that, and we have to have our consultants price that out. It's a big ticket item.
What is that?
So for certain claims, the city of Milford is self-insured up to $100,000 per employee.
Okay.
And claims that reach over $100,000 per employee, we have excess coverage. So we have a carrier that picks up those employees, and there's a policy cost, a premium cost for that excess coverage. And even a couple of I don't want to say employees, because they're not necessarily employees, they're people on our health insurance. One or two of those employees, or three or four of those employees that have significant medical needs, can really drive up those costs. That being said, that's something that we're still waiting for the most up-to-date information on. Another thing that we are looking for is whether or not some of the recent grants from the federal government may be able to, may be eligible for helping to support some of these liabilities that we have. Again, that's still speculative at this point. We're getting additional guidance from the federal government, whether or not some of those funds can be used, and whether or not there's an appetite to use them even if they're eligible. So those are things that probably we will not have information to you by next week, because they're all in flux. But we will give you the most up-to-date information as of the date that we have it. And with that, I don't know if Peter has anything else to add, but I'm here with any questions, and Peter is as well.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I do have some technical changes to present, and I believe we may discuss them tonight
Yes.
if it's your pleasure. I
Yeah.
have the handouts that will prepare us for next week.
I think it'd be best if we could discuss them tonight.
Sure.
That way, and then of course, if there's any more changes between now and next week, we can take care of them next week.
Thank you.
I was trying to find, Mr. Mayor, where in the budget, the self-insurance contribution, is that where it's under something?
So there's a couple places in the budget, all the way at the end, and again, it's broken down to the Board of Education employees and the city employees. So the Board of Education employees are on page 94,
Yes.
and city side is on
Page 84. for the
84.
city.
So, just on that point, so,
Yep, so 84, the self-insurance contribution, object code or account, 15,572,557, that's the city.
right.
And then, of course, the Board of Ed on page 94.
So, if I understand you correctly, are we still waiting, I mean, that represents an $11 million increase, correct? $15 million on the city side? Page 84? That number is, I don't wanna say final, but that's still not a.
That's the most up-to-date information that our consultants gave us. And it's based, the increase is based on experience
Right.
from the account. It likely won't change over the course of the next 2 months, but there may be a way for us to utilize ARPA money or some other type of grant funds to soften the blow. We can't give you an answer yet.
Well, by change, I mean, hopefully the change is a decrease, but potentially it could increase, is what you're saying as well, or do you think that?
Well, the number is the number. That's how much the consultants our insurance consultants are asking us to contribute towards that fund.
Okay,
That number should not increase
Okay.
that much. Again, it may, because we get updated claims information on is it quarterly basis or a monthly basis? We could request it to be more regular, but
so what we're hoping is we might be able to offset that number potentially from other sources than.
correct. And arguably that would be not on the expenditure side, but on the revenue side,
Right.
kind of.
Kind of.
Kind of,
Yeah.
kind of.
It's a work in progress.
It's definitely a work in progress and worth a further discussion once we gather all the information we feel we need to have. What the mayor is referring to or alluded to is that the increase right now is based on the current information
Right.
we have, which is up to date. It's 11.7 million. The factor that may increase this further possibly is the stop loss premium. Right
Okay.
now, the consultants and we have factored in a 20% increase to the stop loss premium for that coverage.
Right,
And it covers claims that are above 200,000. It was 100,000, but several years ago, we increased it to 200, which brought the premium dramatically lower. But again, as you know, the healthcare market changes every year.
right.
And right now, Anthem is, we're in negotiations with Anthem. We've tried to market out the stop loss, and it's possible that, well, at least where Anthem's coming from, that 20% could be higher. We're trying to keep it down to 20, if not lower, but it's still in flux.
Okay, so I was a little uncertain, so that premium for the stop loss coverage
for that coverage.
is included within the 15 million
It's
now.
factored in, yeah. These
Factored
two
in.
numbers are a
Okay.
bunch of factors, and one of the factors is the stop loss premium.
Okay, and potentially that, all right.
Does the actual payouts come out of that fund as well?
So this is our contribution towards our health insurance fund, and our health insurance fund then pays the costs as they are accrued.
Okay.
And it's managed by our administrator, Anthem. And so there's an administrative fee that we pay, as well as the actual dollar-for-dollar claims that we pay as well.
And if the actual doesn't hit these targets, what happens to the surplus? Does it come back and?
So we
Next
always
year.
account, just like in our general fund, we account for a fund balance, a little bit of a, what would you say, a cushion?
Okay.
Yeah, so the fund, as the mayor said, he's correct. We have a health insurance fund, just like we have the general fund.
Yeah.
And so these are the main contributions that are calculated to say, here's what the general fund needs to contribute to the health insurance fund. And then the other components of revenue are the employee cost shares. The Board of Ed has a cost share, any interest revenue. Those are other sources of revenue. Combined with these contributions, the whole total of the revenue has to equal the total expense budget for that health insurance fund. The biggest piece are the healthcare claims, which Anthem is the third-party administrator. We fund those dollar for dollar. The admin fee is relatively low compared to the whole fund, but the stop loss premium is the other component.
maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself, but if, assuming no significant changes to the mayor's proposed budget, which I have a feeling there really won't be many significant changes, what do we see as far as now that we have the grand list in place? How does that, with this proposed budget and the grand list, what are we looking at as far as
So
nowhere?
with the increase, with this increase amount, the good news is that we are going to project, if this budget is approved as presented without any changes, a reduction of the mill rate. It will be somewhere in the high 26 range. It's right now 27.4.
27.65.
7.65, and it will go down, which is good. But again, folks had their assessments adjusted. Some people had their assessments go down, but the vast majority of people's residential assessments, especially in certain neighborhoods, went up.
Well, that could be an impossible question to ask, because obviously with reevaluation, that there's some shifting in the tax burden,
And
increase in property values, but is there a effective decrease, you think? I mean, with any revaluation, you typically get a decrease in the mill rate, in most towns, right, hopefully. But, I mean, do we see that that there's any decrease based upon, other factors, the growth in the grand list through construction or anything else? Like a year or two ago, we had a decrease, I think, because we added a significant value to our grand list even without the revaluation. I might even have been last year or the year before.
so, if there was no reevaluation, I would still say our grand list would have increased by $100 million.
Right.
Is my best guess. Peter, fair enough?
Yep, fair enough.
But it's very hard to say. In 2016, that was the last time that Milford had a reevaluation, and everything was just about as flat as can be.
Right.
Apartment units went up a little bit, and condo units went down a little bit, but single-family homes in Milford, which make up the lion's share of our total tax base, stayed as flat could be, almost no change. This year, there has been a big shifting of the sands, up and down, more so on the residential side. The commercial units did not go up at the same rate as the residential, so there has been a shift in tax burden from, unfortunately for the residential folks, from, to the residential side.
Understood. This may be another unfair or impossible question, but if, hypothetically, if we weren't in a revaluation year and this budget was presented, do you think we would still have a stable mill rate based upon this budget, or would we be seeing a tax increase anyway? I guess
We'd have to know the exact grand list, but there could just be, again, we're still at the early part of the budget.
right.
Probably at this stage of the budget, yes, there would be an increase, but again, we have some work to do before the Board of Aldermen finalizes their share. So it's difficult to say, but one issue that we're really struggling with is this huge increase in
Healthcare.
the healthcare.
Right. Okay, well, that's very helpful. I appreciate the input. I think that gives us some perspective as to where we are in the larger scheme of things, so thank you. Well, any further general comments at this point, or before we get into a page turner? Which will go away, I think, relatively quickly tonight. I don't expect a lot of changes. So we typically, I think we'll start on, I think our first change is page 63, but I think we'll start on page 14. This is Board of Aldermen. I'm going to keep turning pages. If anyone has any comments, please interrupt me. And by anyone, I mean members of the Board of Finance, the Mayor, or Peter. Please jump in if I miss anything, but I think the general sense, based upon our technical meetings and review, I did not see a lot of concerns raised about what was proposed, but if there are, now would be the time to raise them as we address that particular department of fund, so that we can have some discussion and make any changes that might be necessary before we vote next week. So page 14 and 15, Board of Aldermen, elections and register of voters. Page 16 and 17, local government access TV, mayor's office. Page 19, general expenses. This is just a question, the duplicating costs, is that equipment rental basically, is that what we're talking about there? For copy machines?
That's a big part, yeah, that's.
Essentially, yeah.
Essentially, yes, the leases for the
The
copiers.
leases for the copies,
And a few years ago, we centralized the purchasing of most copy machines so that most departments' copy machines, they're not negotiated with individual contracts. Purchasing has a contract for the lion's share of the copy machines now as opposed to what it once was.
Okay, thank you. Community development, page 20. City clerk, page 22. We did see an increase in indexing recording to 36,000, but having using the system on a frequent basis, I think that's gonna be money well spent to change the system, so in favor of that.
And there may be a correlating increase in the revenue account on the revenue portion of the budget too.
Law Department, page 24, Ethics Commission, page 25. Probate Court, Board of Finance, page 26. Permitting land use, page 27. Page 29, Board of Assessment Appeals, Board of Zoning Appeals. These commissions go through, they were primarily secretarial and fees and some audit fees, professional fees, pension board, flood and erosion, tree commission, civil service commission, parks, beach and recreation commission, economic development commission, page 31, conservation commission, page 32. I always frankly get a little confused with Conservation Commission. Are the training expenses for the wetlands, is that what, where do those training expenses, because it's really not an active commission, correct, at this point? Everything goes through
Well,
wetlands?
It is, Jerry Grant, the Open Space and Natural Resource Agent, is the staff
Okay,
administrator for that, and they've had some new,
so there's, okay.
they are advisory in nature, so they make recommendations for certain developments. But they don't have, they're an advisory board.
Okay, that's what I wasn't quite sure how they fit into the scheme, but thank you, that's helpful. Veterans Parade Commission, page 33, Housing Code Board of Appeals, Housatonic River Estuary Commission, Open Space, yes, budget, page 34,
Who's the town
Public Library, page 35. I don't recall, I mean, obviously, the director's not here tonight, but the increase in books from 95 to 105, I don't recall the reason for that. Was there?
It's my I believe that some of the books are actually electronic books,
Oh, that's it, that's
I
correct.
believe.
Yeah, I think that's what
But
it was.
I think she did, I did think that she did kind of discuss, when she was before the board, what the reason was, and I just don't have those notes in front of me yet.
Yeah, it's so hard when we do it by Zoom, I kind of lose the impact of it, but.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring up, if she made any comments, it's just taken a minute.
But thank you, Peter, you can double back.
And I'll find out before next week's meeting.
Thank you. Page 37, Finance Department. I see 0 for a calculator, Peter, you don't need a new calculator?
No, not so far so good.
Not even a placeholder.
All right, going way back. MIS, page 39. Page 41, Human Resources. Page 43, Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do
Yes,
have,
please.
not necessarily anything other than, you seem to be in a situation where you're gonna have a hard time attracting, or you're having a hard time attracting people. How do you address that in a contractual environment? How do you, you have a contract for 100 employees, how do you attract more without really hitting everybody? Or do you stay the status quo and you just run?
So right now, there's an open contract that goes back a couple of years with our police union. So we're in the middle of negotiations. I can't say too much about negotiations because the negotiating team right now is in the midst of trying to finalize a working agreement.
Okay.
But in terms of attracting new recruits, what the police chief had mentioned was that on a nationwide basis, Connecticut and the nation as a whole, there was fewer recruits in general. We've seen that with a lot of different departments, a lot of different positions. There are some positions in particular, like a city assessor, or a class 4 wastewater operator, or there are just certain positions where the qualifications are significant and the number of available candidates are low. So there are a host of positions in the city of Milford, including police officers, where there's been a diminution or a reduction in the number of applications that we've had in comparison to the past. Police, we still have a robust set of applications each and every year.
Okay.
Each and every class, I should say. And the good thing about the city of Milford is that we do run an academy. So whereas some departments will have new recruits that they hire, they can't start right off the bat because they have to find a slot in a academy, either at Post or somewhere else, or the Milford Academy or another academy where they can get their new recruits trained. And it's a lengthy training process before they can become full-fledged police officers. Milford, if we have 17 openings all at once, we can arguably host a class and have each one of those recruits trained all at once. Whereas, another town that does not have an academy, which no other towns do, they may only get 1 slot or 2 slots in a particular class. So that's where Milford does have an advantage of filling in the open positions. I know that there's been articles about Bridgeport and how many open positions they have. We have a lot just because of the nature of the business. We have, 120 police officers, and at any given time, there's going to be some openings because of retirements over the course of a year. But we do have that advantage of being able to fill those positions a little bit quicker than some other towns.
Okay. Well, also, what was the chief's motivation? What the four open slots that he was looking for? What is that? I really didn't understand. I didn't question him. Maybe I should have.
I don't want to speak for the chief.
Yeah.
But I think that there are open positions, and the more positions that you have, you understand that at any given time of year, you're never gonna be at 100% capacity, because there's always gonna be some kind of retirements. I think, and again, I don't wanna speak for the chief, what he was saying was that if you add 4 additional positions, it's that much less likely that we're gonna have as many openings all at once. Milford has always, going back forever, always had some openings during the course of the year, because there's always retirements. And the police department is unique, fire department is unique, there's always folks that are retiring, because, there's some people or some employees on the young age spectrum and some that are nearing retirement, but there's always gonna be some openings, just because there has to be a cycling of the employees.
And what's the downside then of opening up the additional positions? Is it that once you open them, you're contractually obligated to fill them?
Not to fill them, but
Or
to
try
find.
to, like,
You're not contractually obligated to fill them. You're contractually obligated to have a certain number of folks on each shift, but you're obligated, if there are positions in this budget, you are contractually obligated to fund those positions.
okay, and.
Maybe not
but what-
contractually, you're just required to fund those positions.
Okay, but one of the comments that he made is that the overtime is no longer enticing the people. And I don't know if that's a temporary thing or could you theoretically shift some of the overtime money into 1 or 2 of those positions to give him flexibility, because that's the reality we're in now.
So each and every year, this block of wage accounts, we shift it around. We shift money into the overtime account, or we shift money into one of the other wage accounts. We also are looking to do new creative things this year to kind of lighten the load on some of the officers, so that those officers could be, in the patrol cars. So for example, I do know that the chief is looking to have, and this is not the right term,
I'll give you a buy.
I don't wanna say meter maids, but it's parking officers, but they're not officers. Folks to address parking issues.
Okay, which is big in Milford.
Is that the overtime part?
Yes, so there are some things that we have in this budget that are looking to take some of the burden off of responsibilities of the police department. And there's other things too. So for example, through the ARPA money, we just hired, and they're presently working, 2 new police social work positions.
Okay. Didn't quite understand that, that's a
Again,
very good.
it's not in this budget, it's in the ARPA budget.
Okay.
But it's police department employees. So those are taking some of the burdens, shifting some of the responsibilities off of the police department that current officers have right now.
And that ARPA money last time, like 1 year, 2 years?
So it's geared for 2 or 3 years. I think we have to have all of it expended by 2026, but the last 2 years is for projects that are ongoing. Correct, Peter?
Yeah, the money has to be obligated by December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
And then you have two years after that to.
2 years after that to finish out any projects that are.
Okay. So
that
that
have
would
been
give
obligated.
them, the chief or you, or time to evaluate whether they're effective going forward.
Yes.
And at that point, they become part of the regular budget,
This
kind
is
of like
a-
what the Board of Ed is doing.
This is a pilot program.
Okay.
Yes.
That might be interesting to see how that feedback to the chief next year might be a useful thing to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, I think that was very helpful discussion. Any further on police department?
Hey, Hey, one relatively quick question.
Yeah.
We also talked about dispatchers,
Yes.
that they're shorted, you know, and looking at the budget, it seems like the police have them and the firemen don't. Just listing at this stuff, I'm not saying they don't.
Well, they do, like 4 years ago, I think, there used to be separate dispatchers in the fire department budget, but the operations were combined, police and fire, even though they may handle, a dispatcher may handle exclusively fire, the operations center is all that falls under the police department at this point in time.
Okay, that's not the understanding I got from him, and I may have missed it, but,
So, Brian's right, several years ago, we consolidated our fire dispatchers and our police dispatchers into one dispatch center, one PSAP center.
okay.
And however, we still have fire dispatchers and police dispatchers. And as fire dispatchers retire and police dispatchers retire, we are hiring, training, and the capability to do both. And so we have been doing that, but we only hire a new public safety dispatcher that serves as both through attrition. So when one retires, we hire this new position that has capability to do public safety dispatching.
Okay, and the,
And we still have a few fire dispatchers that are exclusively fire dispatchers.
and they, okay, but then they also have like contractual rates. You know, that was the other thing he talked about, is that he's having a very hard time getting dispatchers.
So right now, in addition to being in the middle of a police union contract, or with that collective bargaining unit, we are also in the middle of a contract with our dispatchers.
Okay.
And I think we're pretty close there. So I think some of the issues that are being addressed by our HR department and our legal department are going to help address some of those needs that the chief cited.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nothing further on police department, we'll go to fire department, page 51.
I'm just curious, how many openings did they say they had for fire? Did they,
So they just had a class.
okay.
And my notes say 17 vacancies. So
17.
eight recruits,
How many do we have open?
And
out of 116 positions.
and then it's my
About
understanding,
10%.
Okay.
and it's my understanding that there's gonna be another class of recruits in the summer.
Okay.
In fact, there was just discussions at the fire commission meeting about the next set of tests.
Emergency management, page 58. Animal control, page 59. Lighting hydrants, water, page 62. I think that brings us to our first technical correction on page 63. Peter, is there any,
Yes, this relates on page 64 under the
Okay.
positions. We have filled the office support specialist position, and the person was hired at the minimum step, so I just had to lower the step from maximum to step 1. So it's a reduction to regular wages until 1/5 fiscal week.
Would it be step 2 for next year then?
So that's a good question. You may have noticed the grades and steps look a little different, and that's because I updated the budget book with the munis coding, with the munis position control. So you'll see in munis, our HR payroll system, each position has a position number.
right,
And that's that lengthy number you see in the new position column. And then the grades and the steps, when we converted to munis, we worked with HR to, and Munis to, change these a bit. So they don't match exactly to the way they were in the old, past budget books. So what I'm getting to is that minimum step used to be N for minimum, and now it's 0 in Munis. So 0 is minimum, and the next step is 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5.
So you have it at step 1?
I have it at step 1, and the person right now is at step 0, which is minimum, so it'll go to 1 next year.
And again, some positions only have 1 step, some positions have 3 steps, some positions have 5 steps.
Right.
It all depends on that particular position.
I was gonna make a step joke, but thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Okay, highway parks, page 65. Building maintenance, page 67. And to, I'm sorry, building maintenance, page 69. And to Ray's point earlier, regarding fuel and electricity costs, I mean, we have a pretty stable here. I mean, is this something you would address after our budget, or do you think this is something we should take into account next week or today? I know it's a little bit of a,
So,
projection, but I
most,
don't know.
again, I think all energy costs are gonna be up. I mean, not just gas, but, I think all energy costs probably, it's gonna drive up electricity, drive up a little bit of everything. The good news is that we have made some inroads in terms of making our buildings more efficient. Obviously, the garage account is gonna have, a gasoline tag and a diesel tag, but, for the most part, our buildings, we've found alternative power, whether it's, the 5 buildings that are right here, City Hall, Parsons, the Senior Center, the middle school, and the Tolson building, which is not city related, but part of that same microgrid. We have a new fuel cell at our wastewater treatment plant. We have some things to kind of offset some of the energy costs that we have in town, but there will likely be some uptick. I don't think it's gonna be double, I don't think, but it may be a little more than we hope, but we do build a little bit of a contingency fee in it already.
Okay. And then refresh my recollection, so
And we also
whatever
lock
we're
in-
paying now is under a contract that went out 6-8 months ago. We're gonna do the same thing in the fall?
So, our purchasing agent generally puts out our natural gas contract once a year. It's usually during the fall, but I don't know whether or not he did it this fall.
Yeah, I'm not 100%.
I do know that, for example, right now for gas, we're paying $3.10 a gallon.
Can I fill up my car?
Which is less than the $4.50 that you're paying at the pump. But we locked that in for a year. Is that fair, Peter? A year?
Yeah, usually, yeah.
Yeah, usually, so. But that's not necessarily the fiscal year, it might be a calendar.
Correct. I believe that he last put out, he puts out the different, energy bids at different times of the year, but it's, Peter, do you know when?
No, that's all right, I'm just trying to get a sense of the general
Yeah.
operation, so. So in other words, we may still get the, even with the higher spikes now, because we're locked into prices for, could be a month, could be another 6 months, and so we may not have to bear the full brunt of the increase if things go down.
What may help us with the general fund is we do have an existing energy reserve fund that we created years ago to help in this type of situation. So there's still funds in that account to help offset if we're short.
Okay, well, that's good.
So all of the line items that are related to energy costs, in the good years, the excess for those line items will go into this energy reserve fund, so that in the bad years, we're covered.
I learned something new. It's good to know. Excellent. So remember that fund being there, so, good. Is building maintenance, engineering. That's page 72, engineering. General garage, page 74. Solid waste, page 76. Public debt service, page 78.
So we talked about this a little bit, but the public debt service did go up,
Right, yeah.
and the main reason, or the reason that there was the uptick is because last year it was artificially deflated because we had a bond refunding,
Right.
and a bond and low-interest loan refunding. And that allowed us to, for 1 year, be able to reduce our public debt service costs. So last year, we were able to lower it a little bit, but it was just because of that one-time premium that we were paid for the refunding or the refinancing of our bonds.
Thank you, that's helpful. Health Department, page 79. Recreation Department, page 82. Employee benefits, page 84, we touched upon this earlier.
Just a quick question, what's the longevity? What are those categories for? What does that represent?
So generally, contractually, after being a city employee for 10 years, the employee will get a longevity bonus, which is approximately 1 week's pay. Peter, is that fair? It changes a little bit from contract to contract.
You don't work
I
for the
don't see
city.
teachers.
And again, it's contract to contract, but
Yeah, it's like 10 years and it's a percentage. I believe it's 2.5. And then if you reach 15 years and then 20, it goes up to 20 years.
Thank you.
One good thing about getting old. And I should note, I think you indicated for police, the pension, police, fire, general, that we're actually funding 100% this year, is that
Yes.
correct?
so it's proposed.
Yes.
That's good to see, thank you. Page 85, insurance and bonds, claims and refunds. Benefit salary reserve, page 86, do we anticipate any change in that number?
Well, the only thing I'll mention is we had a tentative agreement with the nurses. So I increased the nurses' budget accordingly based on that tentative agreement, but my hope is that it's ratified in the 23 budget so that I can leave it like that way. Otherwise, we may want to think about putting it back into the reserve instead.
So the answer is yes, we have some open contracts, but I don't know if they're gonna settle before the budget is finalized. So I mentioned a couple of them, I mentioned the dispatchers, which may settle before the contract is, before this budget has been finalized. The police is another open one. There's several open contracts that we have right now that could settle. Some of these take longer to get them finalized, and I just don't know whether they're gonna settle before the Board of Aldermen finalizes its budget mid-May.
Okay. But just procedurally, I suppose, if those do settle, for instance, you're putting anticipated increase into the school nurses now?
Yeah, so as the mayor said, there's other contracts that are not settled,
Right.
and those are on page 86 in that number.
Right.
The exception being the nurses, that they had a tentative agreement in February, and so I took it out of the salary reserve and put it in the nurses' budget.
Okay, you've already done that.
I've already done that,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Got it. Okay, page 87, Council on Aging, Milford Arts Council. Page 88, CMed, Regional Mental Health, Borough of Woodmont. Page 89, Transit Authority, Bridges, Veterans Graves. Page 90, Milford Flotilla. Human Services Department, Historic District, 91, Milford Progress, Historic District 2, Health Services, Cemetery Association. Page 92, Bethel Center, Boys and Girls Club, Literacy, and then there was a change for Historic Preservation Commission.
Again, this is a request from the Historic Preservation Commission Chair, based on some of the costs or the trends. This is not as much of a technical adjustment as it is a request for a adjustment from your board, based on mostly advertising costs.
And I put a copy again of the letter that we
Yes.
emailed to the board. Here's a copy again from the chairman explaining the details of why they're asking for an increase.
Yeah, I did see the letter, thank you. I'm just wondering, the $2,000, do we anticipate that to be an annual expenditure or just a sort of seed money expenditure? Do we know? It's not entirely clear.
They don't have a reserve account, so whatever they don't spend in that fiscal year goes back to the general fund.
Okay.
Right, but
But going,
is it going again next year? Like, are they basically shifting from $650 a year to $3,000 on an annual basis?
My reading of the letter suggests that, yes, again, things may change. Over the course of the last 2 years, the state legislature, the state executive orders allowed towns and cities that previously had to advertise in newspapers. They were exempt to some degree from advertising certain meetings and certain things in newspapers. They were allowed to advertise on their city's website or their town's website. Obviously, that was a cost reduction for advertising budgets. Towns and cities didn't have to do that, but they were given the option. There has been a lot of discussion whether that continues on, whether the legislature adjusts some of the advertisement requirements. Kathy may be able to weigh in on this one. The advertisement requirements moving forward. So your question about whether that's going to be the case 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we may not have some of the advertising requirements into the future.
yeah. Well, my question was more, and I'll actually talk to Bill, but because he's got graphics for the website, that seems like it might be a one-time charge, but who knows, and then the historic plaque cost, it could also be
And again, these are requests. These aren't necessarily, this is not necessarily a suggestion that's coming from Peter's office or my office. This is a request directly from the agency, the commission.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the request, I'm just trying to get a sense, again, the context of it, whether it's
How many historic homes do we have in Milford? Is there-
I think it's ever changing. Bill Silver probably could give you
What
the
are the
inventory, the list of the inventory, but, there is some catch-alls,
Right.
like there is the, Weppawag River Historic,
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what it's called, but.
Historic.
At least 4.
Yeah.
Do
There's,
they all have plaques?
I don't know the,
Because I'm getting
I don't know the
plaques.
number.
Okay.
Okay, so
Well, the demolition ordinance says any house over 50 years old now, right?
Yeah.
So,
What is it? What is it?
over 75 years old, so pretty soon you won't be able to tear down a raised ranch. We're built in the 70s and 50s.
I know, it's 50.
Okay. Well, thank you, that's helpful. Page 93, private school textbooks, education audit, school debt. And, education budget. Did we talked about the city debt, is it similar for the school debt about the lack of a, refunding of bonds, or is that just an increase, natural increase, went up, $500,000, not huge.
Theirs was a little bit less overall because some of the bonds that we refunded last year, they weren't bonds, they were low-interest loans from the sewer fund. So a lot of what we refinanced last year were related to the sewer fund, so not related to the school construction. Is that fair, Peter?
Yes, the issue he was referring to, when we refinanced, the refunded the clean water,
Yes.
low interest loans, yeah.
Okay, we got, page 94, education operations, so, new members, that's a number we'll plug in, next week. The education health contribution. Is that a similar conversation to what we had with the city side as far as self-insurance portion, so that could also be revised. Okay, and then education school nurses. Okay, page 95, there's some changes to that as well.
Yes, on page 96, this is an increase to the employee that was placed in the nurse public health 12-month is at maximum step, which is step 5. So I had to increase that from it was at step 4, and now I've increased it to step 5 to reflect the current employee in the position.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, there's the fund balances, the sewer revenues. Page 98, sewer commission. Okay, so is this what you were referring to a moment ago on page
Yes.
98?
Correct.
For the
Yes.
balance increasing for the principal?
Yes.
Okay. Were we paying primarily interest only on the loans before, or were they amortizing?
No, they were amortizing principal and interest.
Okay.
But then in the market, at that time we did the refunding, the general obligation bonds had a lower interest rate than the state clean water fund loans. So we decided to, there was significant savings, and we paid them off and replaced them with bonds. And the savings was in the last budget, and now it's back, you know, it's back to normal, so to speak. But the good news is the remaining term on the loans is shorter, so they will be paid off soon.
All right, excellent. Good work. Page 101, wastewater. And that goes all the way through page 106. Well, benefit salary reserve, and that's all wastewater. Okay, and then we have the enterprise funds, revenues and expenditures, harbor management commission, page 108. Well, it's the revenue fund is page 108, harbor management commission, page 109. And golf course, page 112. Okay, well, that wraps up expenditures. We can go to the front of the book, page 4. Just a quick page turner, if anybody has any questions on our general fund revenues. That's through page 8. The parking fees, are those shown anywhere here?
Yes.
Parking fines, no, that's fine.
Page 7, beach parking under
Okay, beach parking.
beach parking,
Got it.
page 7.
Okay. And we're projected to have over $200,000 in revenue from beach parking for
Not
this year?
from beach parking. Beach parking is, the projection is 165.
Well, that's the recommended, but I mean,
He means the projection
For
for
this
this year, yeah, on the left side there, 206. That's the number that Bill Garfield
thinks it's gonna
thinks
be.
it's going to be, yes.
That's all by machine now?
I believe so.
It is.
Oh, it's a nice source of revenue.
Just so you know, the amount of resources that we put into the beaches is 10 times.
I know,
So,
I know. I see it on the police side, I get it, but it's still nice to get some revenue to offset. I think you'd have those responsibilities anyway, so it's nice to at least have some offsetting revenue. Well, thank you all. Anybody have anything further?
so next Wednesday, the 16th.
Yes.
Maybe 5:30, right?
5:30, I
5:30.
think, we're conference room B.
We hope to have B back,
What happened in
but
there?
if there's any last minute change, we'll let you, of course, we'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I was lost because conference room A is upstairs because of the size, the updated
Oh.
size.
And I'll walk through that one too.
All right,
You guys want to see it?
so, we were walking around a little bit, I know, we were walking.
This may change, but at this point, all of the conference rooms are second floor.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you walk around the whole square, you'll find one of them.
That's what I did.
I had to do that a lot.
Slip through the open door.
And it's so nice to have these new chairs too. I mean, I guess they're not so new anymore, but no one sat in them for 3 years, so 2 years.
I think they're over about 5 years, well, you know what, they were,
Bought them right
we
before.
bought them for the 375th anniversary, and it is now 380, Milford is 383 years old, so that was 8 years ago.
I don't believe
Time
that.
flies when you stay in the house for 2 years.
We redid these conference rooms in celebration of the 375th. We had the names changed, and we freshen them up, including getting new tables and chairs. But that was, again, 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, because
Had to get rid of the old Hitchcock rockers, original settlers.
Yeah.